Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another video in my history series. Now, I vividly remember the first time I ever heard about this insane piece of history because I refused to believe it was real. Just when you think humans can't get any worse, there's always something, someone to prove you wrong. And this is just the peak of awful. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male was a clinical study conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the United States Public Health Service. The purpose of this study was to observe the natural history of untreated syphilis. Doesn't sound too bad, I hear you say. Medical studies are done all the time. Well, the problem was that the study consisted only of black men, and not a single one of them were told they were part of said medical study. In fact, they weren't even told that they had syphilis. They were told they were receiving free healthcare from the federal government of the United States, and they spent 40 years as unknowing subjects of a medical experiment that was most of the time negatively affecting their lives. They weren't actually being treated for their syphilis. This happened within my parents' lifetimes, probably your parents too, maybe even happened within your lifetime. This experiment was highly unethical and steeped in racism, and it happened less than 50-60 years ago.
This was unearthed by a researcher at Wellesley College. What she found is that in the 1940s, doctors at the U.S. Public Health Service, a part of the U.S. government, were interested in studying syphilis and penicillin. They had penicillin, they weren't quite sure how well it worked. It was in the early days of penicillin. So they went to Guatemala and they found some prostitutes with syphilis, and they arranged for the prostitutes to have sex with prisoners in jail and also with patients who were in a mental hospital, to infect those patients and then give them penicillin to see if it worked. Now, sometimes the patients didn't get sick, so what they did was and this is really horrible, they took their arms and their penises and would abrade them, would sort of rough them up and pour the bacteria onto that skin. And then when that didn't work, they would sometimes just inoculate into the spine. They would do a spinal puncture and give the syphilis that way. And then they would try the penicillin to see how it worked. And let me read a little bit from the apology. It's just coming, today. This happened.
Hang on, this is a U.S. government we're talking about.
Correct.
Human guinea pigs.
Human guinea pigs,
All right.
sponsored by the U.S. government. So
Go
here's
on.
the apology. We deeply regret that it happened, and we apologize to all the, to all the individuals who were affected by such abhorrent research practices. I know, it's almost like you don't know what to say.
And we think about, you remember the Tuskegee Institute, the research there that they did on African Americans. Before we get to that, we'll get to that part of it. Why did it take 60 years to come to light?
You know what? Apparently nobody knew about this. This researcher at Wellesley College was looking into the experiments done in Tuskegee and found that this one doctor named John Cutler, that before he did Tuskegee, he went to Guatemala. So she found these documents and she brought them to light. As a matter of fact, we called the Guatemalan embassy this morning to get a response, and they didn't really even have anything to say. They said this was new to them. They had just heard about it.
And we mentioned the Tuskegee experiment. Is there any relationship?
Yeah, there is a relationship because it was the same doctor, but there is a difference, which I think is important to point out. In Tuskegee, what they did, and this was in the 30s through the 70s, with African-American men, right, African-American men. These were men who naturally had syphilis. They had just caught it on their own, but the government had a medicine for the syphilis. They had penicillin, and they didn't use it. They chose not to use it so they could study the natural course of the disease. So it's, both are horrible. I don't want to compare one to the other. Both are horrible, but they are different.
I really